So, hi Tory Christman.
Hi Steve, how are you?
I'm good. It's really nice to see you again.
It is wonderful to see you too. I loved hearing you talk the other night. Steve did a talk here in Los Angeles and a bunch of us went. It was excellent.
Thanks, and I believe they're going to be putting it up on the SinaiTemple.org website.
Okay, good.
Sometime soon.
Good. It's about mind control and brainwashing, right?
To be honest, I had a head cold and I was jet lagged and I don't remember a thing of what I said other than I enjoyed it and I liked Rabbi Wolpe. I thought he was really cool.
He was good.
And I've read a number of his books in the past, so it was really nice to meet him.
He was very good.
But you know, it's a 3-hour difference between the East Coast and the West Coast. So when I was doing the talk, it was past my bedtime.
Oh,
my body
okay.
clock.
Well, you did
and
pull
I
it off.
And I had a head cold, so I don't remember much.
Okay. Well, Steve, just so anybody lurking who may not know us, he's an expert on. He was in a cult years ago in the Moonies.
The Moonies,
Right.
Some Young Moon.
Right, and I was in Scientology for 30 years. He's written 2 books about what to do when you to get out of a cult, and then how to heal.
The first one was kind of, you know, I can't believe it, but it was written in 1988.
Wow. I was way
it was
into
about my story getting into the Moonies and out of the Moonies and how I started helping people to get out of destructive groups.
Right.
And then 10 years ago, about 1999, 11 years ago almost, I wrote a book about my approach called the strategic interaction approach.
Right.
To help people get out of destructive controlling groups without, you know, holding them against their will or without pressuring them, but just out of love and understanding mind control.
Right.
So.
And one of the things people call me a lot are people that have family or loved ones that are in a cult, and they literally don't know what to do. And one of the things I always recommend is get Steve's books, because you have some good points. And there's a book called Captive Hearts, Captive Minds, which I think is a good one too. But do you have any ideas?
But don't tell people you're in a cult.
Right.
Don't get angry. Don't try to rationally argue them out. But I basically say take a curious yet concerned posture and say, hey, look, you know, it's a big commitment to be involved with anything. Why don't you take some time and do some independent research? You can't always count on the people who are trying to get you into the group to give you responsible, objective information.
Very true.
And be loving and just say, look, if this group is so great, then explain it to me and maybe I'll want to join too. But don't let them say, oh, come to the meeting or come meet so-and-so.
Or we want so-and-so to talk to you.
Right. Don't buy into that. Just say, you know, I trust you. So if it's this important to you, I want you to explain it. And if they say, oh, I can't explain it, I really don't understand it, then remind them that maybe it's not time to make a commitment yet.
Right.
If you don't really understand it well enough to explain it, maybe, you know, put off any decisions to drop out of school and donate your bank account and cut off your marriage partner and other kinds of extreme things.
Which, of course, they're not going to know in the very beginning. One of the things I try to say to people, and correct me if you think that it's too steep, but people are always, a lot of times people jump in, which is what Steve was saying. Don't try to get into the big, deep things right away, because it's just a red flag for them. They turn you in or report you, and then they get cut off from you. So what I say is ask them, like this is especially true for Scientology. I'm not sure if it's true for every cult, but I think it is. But in Scientology, you literally, it's a high crime if you talk to someone like me, or you look on the internet, any of these things, and learn the facts. These are actual facts. If you learn those, you are sent to what they call ethics, and you're in trouble, basically. Well, so let me just finish. So what I say is just ask your loved one about freedom. Because free speech, you know, how do you feel about free speech? And they're going to say, well, I'm for free speech. Okay, so if you're for free speech, then I would like to have a conversation with you. And I want you to promise me that it's between you and I. It's not between you and I and someone else, or you and I and the church or something else. Do you think that's...
Totally, absolutely. Let's just keep it private.
Right.
Don't report anything back.
Right.
And what I was going to say when you were saying, I'm not sure if it's like that with any other group.
Okay.
I was going to say absolutely it is.
Is it with all of them?
And with the Moonies
Really?
in particular, it's called multiplication of evil.
Really?
If you have a doubt and you tell someone else other than your
Ooh,
upline,
that's really
superior,
spooky.
oh, it's totally the same. They have different lingo, but
Yeah.
you're not allowed to think negative thoughts. You're not allowed to criticize the leader. You're
Right.
not, you're given phobias that if you start to question, evil spirits are invading your mind in the Moonies.
Wow.
And I was literally taken along with several hundred Moonies in 1974 to see the Exorcist movie when it came out. And after we saw it, Moon rented the whole theater. We went up to Belvedere, New York, and Moon gave us a lecture about how God had made the Exorcist movie. And this
Honestly?
movie is a prophecy of what would happen to you if you leave the Unification Church. And we were sleep deprived anyway, but I believed it. And it was years after I got out of the Moonies in 1976. It was years after that I started studying psychology and I understood what a phobia was. And I was like, the Exorcist movie!
Right.
How blatant was that? I distinctly remember him saying, this is what's going to happen to you if you leave the family, if you leave God's church. And that's a universal mind control technique that members are told there's no reality outside of the group.
Right.
There's no truth, there's no love, there's no God, there's
Right.
no salvation.
Yeah,
there's
Scientologists, they even have a
suffering.
name, WOGs. Everyone who isn't a Scientologist is a WOG, which they say is wise old gentleman, but it's really a racist term from Africa. And it's horrible. They'll be like, oh, he's just a WOG, don't talk to him.
Well, in the Moonies, everyone outside is satanic.
Wow, it's very
satanic.
similar, so similar.
Satanic.
Yeah, we talked to...
I didn't believe in Satan before I was recruited into the Moonies, but
Right.
everything was satanic
Right,
as soon
I know,
as
me
I got
too.
into the group.
Yeah, like they say, it's the Church of Scientology. I joined when it was really Dianetics, the science of the mind. And that's why a lot of us joined back then. This is the other point I wanted to bring up, is a lot of people go, well, I would never do that. And I want to make something perfectly clear, and you as an expert can acknowledge this. Anybody, and I sat with academics and said this to them, and they all said, anybody at any time can get suckered into a cult if you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And also the other thing I think you say and they said is that often people who get into cults are smart people, not only just smart, but really smart. That's why they got in the cult. They were looking for something higher than the average person.
Right. And I would also add that if you are educated about cult tactics and deceptive manipulation and hypnotic techniques, it's going to be a protector,
Right.
a protective mechanism to decrease the likelihood that you could ever get sucked into a destructive relationship, which I add as well as a group.
Right.
Because I've counseled numerous people who were just taken over by another human being
Right.
who they fell in love with and surrendered to.
Right.
And that person isolated them from their family and friends, took over their bank account, started to change their name, give
Right.
them breast implants, whatever, and make them servants.
Yeah. And so you can say what you think, but he's right. Until you're educated on what is a cult, and you can Google it, you can get his books, you can learn about it, and you have your children learn about it, because Scientology and every other cult are after young people because they have fresh minds and they believe they're BS, basically.
Right.
And they don't have critical thinking skills that much. So teach them how to recognize a cult so they know.
So I would add that on my website, freedomofmind.com, I have what I refer to as the BITE model of mind control, which stands for controlling behavior is the B, controlling information is the I, controlling thoughts or thinking is the T, and controlling emotions is the E. And there's a laundry list of sub-variables under each one of those. So when one considers any relationship or group, you can kind of imagine a continuum where this direction is more destructive influence and more destructive control, and this side healthier influence and such. And you can say, is the group changing my name? Is it changing my diet? Is it controlling my sleep? Is
Cutting
it
off my friends?
isolating me
Right.
from family and friends, particularly people who question what I'm doing? And the more you can check off, the more it goes to the destructive end.
Right.
And it's just focusing on specific behaviors and not necessarily even the beliefs of the group, but just on, does it allow you to have respect and informed consent to make decisions?
Right.
Which is not, I made a commitment 20 years ago, so I have to honor the commitment.
Exactly.
It's, how am I feeling right now? Is this working for me right now?
Right.
And what are my options? And if I believe that I leave the group, I'm going to go insane, I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to be hit by a car, you've got a phobia.
Right.
And I have pages of the most common phobias in my second book, Releasing the Bonds. And people look at me and they say, people actually believe that crap? They actually believe you're going to be hit by a car if you leave a church? And it's like, yeah, they really do.
But I will say this, my father was a professional football player, and he was a broadcaster in the 60s, Paul Christman. And he used to say to me all the time, Tory, Monday morning quarterbacks are a dime a dozen. And it's very true for what we're talking about. Everybody knows what you shouldn't do once they've looked at it. Right?
That's really true.
But when you're in it, you don't recognize it. And honestly, I'll give you a story, but I also want to tell my YouTube site, which is torymagoo.org. And I have a lot of... Is it torymagoo.org? No, that's my website. It's
well, give your website.
My website's torymagoo.org, which is just different articles I wrote on a certain news book in 2000. That's mostly what it is.
Right.
Stuff I've written.
I'll put underneath the description of this video what it actually is, that your YouTube.
Yeah, and the YouTube is Tory Magoo 44 on YouTube. But here's a true story about a lady in the Midwest said, honey, I just got a little flyer, we can go do Scientology's management thing. And it's just a management thing by L. Ron Hubbard. It didn't even say Scientology. And she said, I think we should go. It'll help our business. They flew to Florida. They do the interview. They each had separate interviews. The first interview, they said, what do you think about Scientology? She said, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm here for the management technology of Hubbard. They did 8 interviews with her husband over the weekend. They were married for 17 years. She called me on Monday. At the 8th interview, he walked out and said to her, either you join Scientology or it's over. This was last year. So you have to understand, this is going on now. It's not like, oh, those old cults. You know what I mean? They're out actively manipulating people every single day.
Yeah.
Right?
And just to highlight the power of an authority figure over another person, especially if they're using very hypnotic kinds of techniques. Right. Check out on YouTube a British entertainer named Derren Brown. Derren Brown. Do a search for Derren Brown plus voodoo. Okay? And it shows a segment where he has this woman who's very new agey. Right. And he convinces her he's got a voodoo doll and paralyzes her legs and her arms and her mouth just through words in the space of minutes. And at the end, she's like, how did he do that? Right. But it's really obvious that there's something going on that's nefarious here. And it doesn't take days and months and years. No. And the thing about the human brain and the human mind is that we learn fast and we adapt to our environment. Right. And people who are influence professionals, like cult recruiters, know a lot of stuff. And not necessarily cognitively. No. But because I was trained to just mimic the older brothers and watch how they gave lectures and how they recruited. We called it witnessing. Right. It's a Christian-esque kind of term. And so it was literally years after I got out of the Moonies, I saw someone doing a hypnotic demonstration. I said, that sounds really familiar. That sounds like what I used to do when I was lecturing. Right. Because I was kind of talking in this kind of tone of voice. It was really smooth and really, and it was like, wow. So that's something that was done intentionally, except nobody explained in the Moonies were teaching you hypnosis. Right. But another technique they taught me in the Moonies was to look into people's eyes. Oh yes, Scientology's got that. 3 inches. Right. If you can imagine an intersection of my fingers, I would just stare into people's eyes as a good Moonie and ask them if they were having a good day or not.
Right, Scientology does the same thing. It's called confronting.
But if you study the hypnosis literature, one of the fastest ways to induce an altered state of consciousness is something called an eye fixation pattern, where you're fixating your eyes, whether it's on a point or on another person. When you're actually talking about cult recruitment, when a cult member is doing the eyes, what winds up happening is your breathing starts to go into synchrony. And that just speeds up the indoctrination.
It's so amazing. And I know people listening to this will go, it would never happen to me, and I can't say it enough. Learn about cults, because it can happen to you. It does happen to people. One of my friends who's a big critic of Scientology, one of his church members just gave $60,000 to the Church of Scientology. And we were like, because there's so much on the net, you think, oh, people, it's not going to happen anymore. But they're good at what they do, and in Scientology, probably like the Moonies, they use celebrities to also rope people in, and especially young kids. Tom Cruise, John Travolta, hello. How can they be in? People ask me that all the time. How could they be in? Watch The Truman Show. I've said it a million times.
Truman Show's a good show.
And you're isolated, you're insulated, and especially the celebrities. The more powerful you are, the more you are isolated and insulated.
And speaking of The Truman Show, one of my favorites was a show with Robin Williams and Walter Matthau, a really old movie called The Survivors.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
And Robin Williams joins a survivalist cult.
Right.
And in one scene, Walter Matthau's trying to, get him out of it and stuff. Anyway, it's sad, but it's funny.
Yeah.
So in any case, Tory, it's 2010. Top leaders are coming out, being public.
Right.
I've never seen it. This is 34 years I've been, witnessing and watching and hearing from people coming out. It seems like something profoundly different's happening.
Profound.
Can you tell me what your perspective is?
Well, I think a couple things happen in Scientology. Number one, there's a group. They're not a group. They're not organized. But in 2008, someone leaked a video of Tom Cruise on the internet saying you're either in or you're out. And he looked pretty wacky. The church right away ordered it off of YouTube. People around the world, they call themselves anonymous, said not on our watch. No. We're not... and they put up a video, and they started actually picketing and speaking out, and I believe from that, this is my own opinion, there's safety in numbers. And when all of a sudden we did a picket with 9,000 people around the world, every major city, against Scientology, most of them anonymous. They have on the V for Vendetta mask because they didn't want Scientology to follow them around, which they did anyway. They hired private investigators and went to their homes and stuff like that. But you can type in anonymous plus final, I think it's called Final Version in 2008, and you can see the picket. It's fabulous. But that's what I think brought about the safety of people going, you know what? There were a lot of people that were out, but they weren't talking, and all of a sudden they were like, I'm going to say who I am. I'm going to say who I am. And it's like once that starts happening, I've said it forever, TikTok, time is on our side. Right? Because
and people like you have led the way, in my opinion, due to your courage and my friend John Atek.
Right. There's a lot of people before me even who left before
Jerry
the net.
Armstrong,
right.
And
Those
Arnie
people
Lerma.
Right. And Jesse Prince.
And Jesse Prince, of course. How could I forget?
Stacy and Bob. There's a lot of people that left before the internet. Right. And that was real. They helped pave the road that I'm talking about with Anonymous and the critics and everything else.
Right, but I can tell you when the internet first started, and Scientology was doing dirty tactics,
which I was part of,
that immediately got a lot of geeks against them.
Right.
So it was like automatically people who knew nothing but just said this is dirty business. Yeah. And any group that does that is no good. Exactly. So the net is the biggest thing. The net is, for me, exactly. Yeah. And I think the fact that more and more people have access to the internet. I agree. And one of the key features of a mind control group is controlling information. Exactly. It's the eye of the bite model. Yeah, that's when they lost it completely. And I was part of it. They had me out opening phony accounts so they could like spam everything down the page so people couldn't literally see the facts. But once I was involved in the early days of the internet. I was, and they wouldn't tell me. Well, they wouldn't tell me what they were doing, and I said, and I trusted my auditor, who's a counselor, and he said, "Don't worry, it's all legal."
we're just handling these evil people. And I was like, okay. And then finally they started acting so mafia-like. I thought, wait a minute, what are these guys really doing? And I went on the internet and looked, and they had typed out baking recipes that day, and there were like 1,000 baking recipes, and in between it were people saying, I didn't say this, Scientology's changing my words. And that's when I went,
wow.
oh, they're using these accounts to stop free speech. And I realized I didn't get into Scientology to stop free speech. The other thing that helped me wake up is I realized, wait a minute, in any cult, the greatest thing is being in the cult, right? But I started thinking, how many great people, actors, musicians, scientists, free speech advocates, Martin Luther King, Thomas Edison, just people that you can think of. Think of anybody great. Michelangelo. Were they Scientologists? Were they Moonies? No. Answer, no. And that was a big wake-up for me.
Of course, in the Moonies, we thought we knew the divine principle, and therefore we were smarter than Albert Einstein, and we were smarter than Jesus.
Right, but when you add up all of them, you kind of go, wait a minute, those guys made a lot groovier things than anybody in the Moonies or Scientology, and they weren't even, they weren't either one of them.
Right, and I think, if I remember your story, you interacted with one of the major critics and found out that he was a nice person.
He helped me. He was in Norway. He was one of the... I've been waking up for 10 years, reading self-improvement books, and just nothing against cults, just things to help my life, because Scientology was not. But then he finally helped me on the internet, and I thought, wait a minute, this guy's like a huge evil person. And he had his full address and his full phone number on it. And that's when I went, there's something... That's when half my Truman Show cracked. Because I thought, wait a minute, we're lying, we're using phony addresses, phony names, we can't even talk on the phone and say, this is Tory, I had to be Kate, right? Because they were so terrified.
That's fascinating. The point that got me out of the Moonies was realizing Moon was a liar.
Right.
When it finally dawned on me that I'd heard him lie, he had told me to lie to the members, but when it finally sunk in, how can I trust a liar?
Right.
If he's manipulating things for what he thinks God needs to do, then where's truth?
Right.
And where's honesty?
Right.
And my understanding of God is about truth and honesty.
Exactly.
And that's when the House of Cards started to come down for me, even though I was a total fanatic, I must confess.
And me too, but let me say this, everyone in a cult thinks they are fighting for truth and honesty. Yeah. That's part of the cult. Right?
Yeah. Well, you feel elite, you feel chosen, you feel special, you have the elite knowledge, you're going to save the planet.
But that's the tricky thing. It's so, they're set, like Scientology's selling communication, they cut everybody off from communicating with anybody but what they want.
Yeah.
You can't read certain books, they sell freedom, but you're not free at all. The higher up you go, the less free you are.
Right. And they, I've interacted with Scientologists when I was in the Moonies, as well as when I got out, I met ex-Scientologists, and they would be like, well, we can teach you how to communicate with anyone at any time about anything. And I'm like, well, let's talk about brainwashing in China.
Oh, no, we gotta go.
No, we can't do that. No. Or I'd say to OT7s, I'd say, listen, I'm a cult critic, I've written a book, I'm on TV.
Oh, yeah.
You can convert me right now, just will that ashtray to float up and move across the room. Oh, you wouldn't believe a parlor trick. I don't want to reduce my powers to a parlor trick, or you wouldn't believe it if you saw it.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be like, I'd believe it. Do it. No strings, no magnets.
No. And that's the other thing.
Now.
I am OT7, and I started looking at the other OT7s and 8s, and none of them could do anything. In fact, they were exponentially worse as they got higher. Right? True.
Well, but it's true. It is true. In fact, the people who are most successful in the Moonies of recruiting new people were the newcomers.
Right.
Not the people who are in for 10 or 20 years. They're vegetables.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we used to say of Heber Jentz, who used to be the president of the Church of Scientology. This was when I was in. We used to say it's like they vacuumed out his spirit. It's like he was gone. I was sad.
So that brings to mind a 1989 Geraldo show I was on, the last Geraldo I agreed to be on, and Ibergens was opposite me.
Was it with the 9 minutes?
And he brought the proof that I'm a kidnap deprogrammer and that I beat and torture people and rape people. And here's the proof.
Right.
I'm like, I don't believe in kidnapping. I've never kidnapped anybody. I've never hurt anybody. What family would hire someone to hurt their loved one?
Right.
Is that even logical?
Right.
And he's like, don't tell me I've got the proof.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we don't.
Yeah, exactly. And they have tons of proof against how evil I am. And, it's like, it's all flat out lies. And I always say to people, call me. My phone number's on the internet. You call me and hear my side. And then we'll talk. You know what I mean? But you know what happens?
My number's on my website.
Yeah, but nobody will ever, the Scientologists will never call. Not ever. Now they are. Now they're starting to wake up.
Until they start realizing, hey, if this group is legitimate, it will stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah,
and
now it's starting to happen.
Then what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And isn't it time to move on?
Exactly.
And kind of do the things that I've always wanted to do that I had to put on hold or I had to shove aside? Hey, listen, I need to ask you something.
Okay.
I know that you have to go shortly. It's been a while since we've actually had a chance to sit down and talk, so I've been wanting to ask you in person this question. John Travolta, epilepsy, Scientology, medication. Could you please tell me your perspective? In your experience.
So let's just end this other one and say thank you very much, and then we'll start the other one, because it's really a different one. This will be too long. So thank you for watching our video, and go both of our websites and YouTube.
And watch the next video.
Watch the next video. Okay. All right. So there you go on that, so you can cut that.
Okay.
So